Welcome back to the Chasing Common Ground podcast. I am joined by who some may actually say is my doppelganger because this has come up. Daniel Yores. So did I get your last name right?
Yeah, close enough. Close enough. Yoris,
What is the
Yores,
proper way to
yours.
say it?
So, not that we need to spend time on this, but like the proper way to say it is actually Gyoref,
Ooh,
except when my grandfather and his father, my great grandfather, came to Canada from Greece, they didn't know how to read or write in English. And they just said their last name, and the officer wrote, sure, Yores. And they looked at it on the paper and said, yep, I guess so. I don't know. And that's it. So that's it. That's the story.
oh,
But
nice. I
but
like
yeah,
it.
for all like realistic intents and purposes or practical, Yoris is good.
Okay, okay. I mean, I'll give you a side story. A mutual friend of both of ours, because I know you've had him on your podcast, Dean Guido. I think the proper way is Dean Guido. And I've just sometimes depends what day it is. Sometimes I'm like Guido. Sometimes I'm like Guido.
Yeah,
If you really want to just toss it up, you could say Guido
there
or
you go.
Guido,
Yeah,
like just so many things. But it's like, last names are important. So I liked hearing that story of yours
yeah, I think so
because
too. It's
now,
important to know where you're from.
yeah, and it's cool to hear and understand like the depth to which like there's so many layers to people. Um, which before we dive into it, that is something that was like top of mind for me as I was kind of like thinking about the podcast. I was like, how many white guys are in the industry who have like the same look, like some facial hair, um, maybe some either
Bald
full
or
on
balding.
bald,
Yeah,
part bald, short hair, whatever it is. Um, and there's a lot of us. And a lot of the times people is another one of them guys. I'm like, we're so diverse though. Like there's so many differences to us. We're just not we're not all the same. That said, for my audience, I would like you to kind of just warm up the room, introduce yourself however you want to. What do you do? What's your things that stand out for you?
of course. I definitely agree with you there. This look avatar is certainly a common thing. I was at the Swiss conference here in Toronto this past weekend, and there were a lot of bald dudes with beards walking around there for sure.
Yeah,
But
we're everywhere.
yeah, yeah, and I don't think it's like I don't know why. It is what it is. But anyways, my name is Daniel. I live in or just outside of Toronto, and I'm a personal trainer. I'm a podcast host. Coach people both in person and online. And the maybe this is something we'll get into and maybe not, but like kind of the reason or how I got into all this, to make a long story very short, is that I spent a lot of time getting injured playing sports growing up, and that led me in and out of physiotherapy clinics and chiropractic clinics and athletic therapy clinics and just kind of getting interested in the body. And that's where that kind of interest in performance and uh, biology and physiology and all this stuff kind of came. And then fast forward, 10 years, and I just want to help people, and I want to help people to be healthy. I want to help people to move better. And I think that we can use like fitness and health as a way to then improve the rest of our life. And we use this as a sort of catalyst, or dare I say, a gateway drug to improve everything else in your life, and then by extension in the world. So that's my shtick.
I like it. I like it. And there's going to be parts that we'll dive deeper into as the conversation unfolds. One of the things that I want to encourage people to do is like not all of my podcast guests have like a legacy of content of their own, but Daniel does. And so you can go and check out his podcast to learn more about the people that he's interviewed. And your story kind of unfolds within your podcast as well. I personally highly recommend doing stuff like that because it helps to kind of like get out of like the biases of me as a host, and it helps to kind of expand your network as to more and more people that you could resonate with, stories that inspire you, stories that get you through like struggles or self-doubt or confidence issues. So I'm not like a gatekeeper when it comes to keeping my audience as my audience. If my audience feels like going on side quests, I always encourage it, because it's what's allowed me to grow as a person. So as such, I would feel like I was letting people down if I discouraged them. One of the things that I was thinking about is As I have gotten older, I have thought back to moments of a younger me. And I've seen like correlations where I've been like, okay, now I'm older me. And I'm seeing all these pinpoints of like the shift between me being the recipient of the advice to me being the deliverer of the advice. And sometimes the advice that I deliver sounds familiar because somebody that came before me gave me that advice and I wasn't ready to hear it. On that note, I would love to know if you have had any experiences where maybe advice that you heard 5, 10 years ago, 15 years ago didn't land, but now you're giving that advice to somebody. Is there any moments like that that you're experiencing?
This is not so much advice, but we'll get into that. But this happened like maybe 2 weeks ago now. And it was one of those moments where it makes you really realize and appreciate the things that you've done. Because I think that we're really good at like congratulating and clapping for other people and not so much ourselves. Where in the gym that I was at, there's another trainer there. I think he's still in school actually. He's a young guy. I think he's like 18 or 19, and he's like, man, like you're doing amazing. Like I see you in here with your clients. Like you're looking great. Like your workouts are great. Like you're really strong. Like, and he was kind of just like buttering me up and firing me up a little bit. And I was like, okay, that's really cool. But I don't think about myself as like doing so amazing. But if I would have been in his shoes or my shoes when I was 20 and now I've just turned 30 and looked at what I'm doing now, I would probably be like pretty happy and like looking up to that person, I think. And so it's just important to always like remember how far you've come in that. But as far as like specific advice, I mean, the main thing is just being consistent like that. And I know it's such a simple and like kind of boring message to continue to hammer on about, which is a little bit ironic. But when I was younger, like I would get in and out of, I would get in these ruts of like going all in on stuff and then kind of being all out. And naturally that wasn't like super productive. And now my biggest thing is like, hey, you just need to keep going. It doesn't need to be all in, and because that leads to the opposite, which is being all out. So consistency is like far and away the thing that I am banging on about, preaching the most. That was something that was told to me, and you don't really get it until it happens to you. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing is like you almost have to just do it to understand. The other thing is about taking quick action. And this is something that was told to me again when I was younger, probably 8, 10 years ago. It's like when you decide that you want to do something, like don't dwell too much on it. Like do a quick, pros and cons analysis and then just like go do it because you're gonna waste time and get further behind by not doing it. Now, the biggest thing for me with that has been like my entirety of social media. As soon as I started, a couple months later, I was just kicking myself. Like, why didn't I just do this way earlier? I was being ridiculous for not doing this way earlier. And everything with fitness. Like, I mean, how many people do we see as coaches that have been thinking about joining a gym, thinking about hiring a trainer, thinking about starting a new diet for months and months and months? And it's like, well, if you started when you thought about it, you would have been at your goal by now. But we've kind of like we've delayed for a year or 6 months, and that's fine because people have their reasons for that. But when you have something in your head that you actually want to do, just take quick action from it, and you can always like reverse it if it's not something that you really want. Like if you hate going to the gym, you can just stop going to the gym. So I think taking action on things that you actually want to do quickly and being consistent at them are really the two like biggest lessons that I found myself kind of hearing but not fully understanding until more recently.
And I mean, those people can unpack those within the context of their life, and they might just brush it off, just like everybody says consistency, consistency, whatever, consistency. Or they might be like, oh yeah, everybody just wants me to do more stuff, take more action. I'm already doing enough stuff. But as soon as they contextualize it within like areas of their life that are more dear to them, then it starts to open up like a lot more of like the sense of urgency or like the relevance to it. And some of that could be just like the most what some would deem to be a mediocre mundane lifestyle. Like for example, like let's say there's a dog owner listening to the podcast. In order for the dog to go poop, he has to be taken for regular walks. And so as a result, that dog owner has been going for regular walks for the entirety of that dog's life. And they might not think much of it, but that is them demonstrating consistency in their life that may have improved their health markers. Like the fact that they owned a dog might be the reason why their heart health is in a better state than had they not owned a dog. And
Hmm.
they might just summarize that by like, I'm just a dog owner. He's just a little toy dog, no big deal. But that dog could have potentially saved their life. And then even from another standpoint, I'm coming across so many people who are just like super excited about like all the promises that the internet brings us, like that instant gratification, being able to work from the beach, selling things without any effort, like just and any industry too. Like it's everywhere. It's not just fitness. I've seen it in barbershop industries. I've seen it in real estate industries. I've seen it in nail industries, like doing the custom nails and the gel nails and all that stuff. Everybody's doing it. And then it comes back down to that consistency. Whereas if you keep flippy flopping, you can't get results. If you rebrand yourself every 4 months, what kind of momentum could you realistically expect for yourself? Whereas if you stay the course and you just kind of build on the things that you're doing and you're consistent and you look for the ways to improve and you don't quit when it's tough and you ask for help when you need it, that makes a huge difference. And I also like what you talked about with that, like taking action faster. Because like there's the positive compound effect and there's the negative compound effect, and there's the finiteness with how much time that we have to make these decisions that we have. Something that comes up for me, I don't know if it's my brain's wired wrong or what, but I think about like how time just disappears. Like we don't have all the time. So when I'm like getting an opportunity to spend time with family, regardless of their age, the state of their health, what they got going on, any family member, whether it be a baby or a 90-year-old uncle, I'm like, this is special. I'm going to try and be present. I'm going to try and really soak up the moment. I'm going to be spontaneous. Like if they want me to go wall climbing, I'll go wall climbing. If they want me to look at some old pictures, I'll look at some old pictures because I don't know if I'm going to get to do this again.
Hmm.
And in that same breath, like there's a lot of people who forget how their actions today can have such a profound impact on the outcomes of future them, like whether it be talking to somebody about what it would take for them to retire faster so they could spend less of their time stressed, or whether it be investing in 3 personal training sessions just so they knew that much more about how to strength train for the rest of their life, whereas they might have not done it because they couldn't afford 9. Just ask about 3 sessions and you'll be that much further ahead. And I'm not even trying to sell it. I'm just trying to conceptualize for people the difference that urgent action can make. But at risk of yapping too much, I'm going to turn the table back to you.
On
So you are someone who, well, actually, was there more that you wanted to expand on that point?
just that last thing that you were saying there, like
Yeah.
if you're gonna buy like 3 personal training sessions instead of 9, I think we can extrapolate this to any skill. I think that most people are more competent at anything than they think they are. Most things, like we have so much access to knowledge in fitness and anything else you want to do that like within a couple of YouTube videos, you're not going to be a professional, the best in the world at it, but you're like probably more competent than you think you are. So spending a little bit of time to learn a thing, be it training, be it nutrition, be it I don't know, some home DIY project that you want to do, like any of these little things, you can learn them pretty fast. And so remembering that you are more capable than you think you are will give you the like it's kind of a strange word to use, I think, but like empowerment to be able to just like, hey, I have confidence that I can go and do it and accomplish anything that I want. When you realize that most of the people who are experts or at the top of their field, like there was a time where they didn't know anything either. They weren't born with like this secret knowledge that someone just downloaded into their head, like, here's everything about fitness. Like everyone didn't know anything at some point, and via courses or mentors or experience or textbooks or a combination of all of the above, most likely you learn things. And so if they can do it, like you can do it too. And if you're not willing to, there are always people who are willing to help you. So like everything, I think the main piece of this message here is like everything is very figure outable, and not doing something because you don't know how to do it is, when you stop and think about it, like a pretty lame excuse, because it's pretty easy to figure out how to do things, at least at the basic level, which is for the most part probably what you need. If you need to do something more, like you're not going to build your whole house by yourself, but like could you fix a, you know, like a sink or something like that? Like probably you could, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm glad you made that point because it's just like there's so much a person could do taking action from some of the messages that they'll hear, and it's just a matter of are they going to or not. And it could just be a matter of just doing something differently than what you've done before. And it doesn't have to cost them money. It could just be a matter of just changing the routine just slightly, get a slightly more positive outcome, and then trying to maintain that for as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that stands out to me about you, is you like to just kind of make time for you to travel or to just enjoy the great outdoors. I know you tend to do some snow sports and stuff. Are you a skier or a snowboarder?
Snowboarder as of like the past 2 years.
Sweet. So tell me about the origin of that. Like how did that come to be and what keeps you coming back if that is a thing that you do?
Yeah, it's definitely so all of like enjoying nature and trying to just like enjoy time. If I can think of like a moment, and I definitely can think of a moment, was in I guess it would have been sometime in the fall of 2020. Yeah, so it was during COVID, during like whatever. And yeah, it was the fall because the gyms here in Toronto had like they were open for a bit and then they had closed again. And it was like a pretty like defeatist day, and it was feeling really down about everything. And so, but it was like it was a Wednesday, and I went with, so things shut down at like noon that day, and this is at the time where I was like fully coaching people in person. It was like 10 sessions a day. It was, crazy times. I didn't really have a lot of time to like enjoy anything. I was just working, training people, and that was the only thing that I was like doing. Now at that time, or that afternoon, I went with she's now my fiance, and at the time was like we were kind of sort of starting to date. And we went to this place in Toronto and kind of just like hung out and like watched the sunset at this park over this thing. And I was amazed at like how many other people were there on a Wednesday. And I was like, okay, I know that like, I'm off work right now because of what just happened. But like there's no way all these other people, like all these other people are not trainers whose gyms just got shut down that are off work. Like don't these people have jobs and families and like things to do? And I kind of realized like, oh, like people are just out here on a Wednesday just enjoying the sunset. That's really cool. And like how many, I mean, I guess you'll get in theory a lot more sunsets. It's not a rare event. But they're just enjoying their time. And so that was like a small little catalyst. But then it led me into like through COVID, there's a lot of time to enjoy things, enjoy spending time with people, because that was a thing that we all missed. Sure, you enjoyed or you missed, going to the gym or maybe going to the movies or going out to a restaurant. And like, but what did you actually miss about that is spending time with people doing things. So previous to that, I was just like training people in person, you know, crazy, busy life and not really worried about enjoying anything at all. And I was like, okay, we can slow down and we can enjoy some of these things. So the next thing then is being able to enjoy it while you're doing it and not being on vacation and worrying about whatever, your business, your job, your things that are happening. Like enjoy that thing while it's happening, because that makes the experience way better. And so then add in the snow sports and the nature. I've been a fan of just nature and being outside and spending time outside for a long time. I think just anecdotally for myself just makes me feel better, and I think that that's probably a safe thing to assume for basically everyone. Then with snowboarding, I realized like I hate winter, but I live in Canada. That's not really a good combination. And so I've got to find a way to hate winter less. Growing up, I played hockey, but hockey's like it's still inside. It's not like a nature thing. It happens in the winter, but conceivably it could happen all year round. Um, So how do I not get upset when it snows outside and all that stuff? Well, if I engage in a snow sport, then when it snows outside, I can actually get excited because hey, I can go snowboarding today because it snowed, so it's a great day. And so that was only a couple of years ago, literally 2 years ago. And so that's been huge and allowed me to have some very cool experiences. Like last or this past winter, I went to Whistler and snowboarding there, and it was an amazing trip. But I literally wouldn't have done that if I didn't snowboard, and I wouldn't have never been on top of the of Whistler Mountain and looking out at those views and having those experiences if I didn't do that. And so I think by getting outside of like the thing that you do, whatever job it is that you do, whatever like bogs you down on a day to day, and giving yourself those opportunities to go and explore life and just experience the things that like the world has to offer is it's an important thing to realize, but also a difficult thing to like make time for it to do because it's really hard to just put that stuff aside and be like, oh, work can wait. This thing can wait. And you realize quickly that most of these things that seem urgent are like not urgent at all. Like
Mhm.
any email, like it can, I promise you, it can wait. Like everything's gonna be fine. It's all okay. So that's really my thing. It's just finding ways to like enjoy life more. Because if we're not doing that, if we're just like getting by, you're just like going through the motions day to day, like I'm not sure what we're really getting out of this. Like I think that life should be about enjoying, about living it, and then about sharing and passing on. And if you just go through it and you have nothing to share and pass on, then I'm not sure how much you really accomplished in this life. But that's like my outlook for me and how I want to live my life.
I love it. I love it. I completely endorse that whole thing because there's just so much importance to people hearing what you've kind of shared there. Something that resonated with me is kind of highlighting like the sunsets, sunrises, sunsets, all those things. There's certain like snapshot moments that I'll remember forever that I know are like once in a lifetime moments, and they are sort of like the foundation to which I make my future decisions. So I'll kind of share some context. I was fortunate to have friends in my life that encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone before I even went into the fitness industry. And some of the lessons that they imparted on me have been fundamental in like my life philosophy going forward. Like they've probably changed my life. And so because they had a different perspective on life. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
all about just work hard, work hard, work hard, just burn the candle at both ends, do as much as you can, get as much out as you can. And if I stuck to that point of view, I would not travel. I'd just keep justifying, no, I need to use this time for work. I'd never leave my house. Like I would be such a hermit. But
Right.
because I have had the experience to, well, everybody I've connected with has changed my life. Like everybody who's been on my podcast, everybody who I've worked with, for better or for worse, has changed my life. And the snapshot that I'm highlighting here is having these like once in a lifetime opportunities to like be sleeping on the beach in Hawaii when the sun is rising and when the sun is setting. And like Hawaii, when the sun sets, like because the sun reflects off the ocean or goes through like the ocean water, like it has an impact on how the sky looks. Like it's like these are sunsets and sunrises that are unique to specific geographical locations, very
Mm-hmm.
similar to how people get all fired up about Aurora Borealis in northern North America. Um, and it's just that I won't experience that again. I can't foresee me being in that specific period of my life experiencing that with such a raw, like, holy crap, what is this?
Yeah.
Holy crap, I'm like sleeping on a beach in real life. Like I'm not going to a hotel after this. Like these unique experiences. And as I have like poured more of myself into my career to try and get ahead in life and try and reach my income goals so that I can not have to check my bank account when I go to the grocery store, all these little simple things that people desire. It has reminded me that I will always have a to-do list and I'm not getting the time back. So if I have to tell somebody that something's going to be a couple days later, or if I slow down with the podcast, or if I just don't have as much output as I thought that I was going to have, but the reason being is because I decided to kind of just stop and smell the roses, like that's huge. And so I'm just hoping that people choose to be ambitious, but also ambitious people collecting moments to enhance their human experience. And before I ask you your next question, I'm going to give a special shout out to one of the most dedicated podcast listeners of this show to ever exist. And this is somebody that I work with. Her name is Joan. She's had many shout outs. I think I even talked about her on your podcast, Daniel. But Joan is a real one. She has now listened to every single episode of my podcast. She may check out other people's
Wow.
podcasts as well. And that just meant the world to me because I I don't know if my parents have listened to every episode. I don't know if aunts or uncles or anything, but I do know that she has. And what that helped me to realize is that as I go back to old episodes, there are some aspects of consistency where I kind of have similar messaging throughout. There's also a lot of like personal growth. There's things that I realize about myself where I've changed my mind on certain things in life. And I've also been able to kind of like share insights with past guests. I've had guests who've been on the show and they've been through a separation, or guests who've been on the show and now they're a parent, or guests who've been on the show and now they're in a different industry, but they're totally happy and life is good. And I have those time capsules and I know that you would have them too. So I would love to learn more about perhaps some of your insights that you've experienced throughout the lifetime of your podcast, maybe things that you've changed your mind on, things that your perspective has been changed on, or just maybe how it's impacted how you do life in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So I think that it's this, and I hate to like bring this up again, but it actually is just consistency. So I'm approaching 200 episodes on my podcast. It's like almost 4 years, I guess. Almost 4 years. Not quite, like a year and whatever, almost 4 years. And in that time, as I'm sure you've seen this, Chris, over the time that you've been doing all the social media stuff, how many people have you seen who come up and they're all gung ho? I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to start posting on Instagram 4 times a day, and I'm going to do all this stuff. And they do it for a week, a month, 3 months, and then they're gone. And then you realize, like, okay, like 200 episodes in, like that's pretty significant. Like, just sticking around and continuing to do this is the most important part. I think about all of my favorite episode or favorite podcasts that I listen to. They're in the multiple hundreds of episodes for the most part, especially all like the bigger shows. And I probably didn't even find them until they were like 500 plus episodes in. And they were already gigantic at that time. And so really just being consistent. And it's a thing that comes up with all the guests as well, because as much as I'm trying to like educate through the podcast and via guests, I'm also learning from the guests as well. And so everyone has this element of like, yeah, I started 10 years ago, and maybe they're like a mega success now, but they started 10 years ago not knowing anything, fumbling around, trying to just figure it out like the rest of us. And then they kind of stuck through it, kept going, whatever, and now they are what they are. So having staying power is a major thing, and it's like it's also about delaying gratification. A podcast is a very like you don't get a lot of tangible reward from it. There is a gigantic amount of intangible reward in having people like Joan or people like that who are dedicated listeners. You get someone sharing the podcast every now and then, or a nice comment or a review and things like this, but you don't get any money from the podcast directly. Like no one gets paid for views, even if you had like 10 million views. You don't really get paid for that. It's not a thing. It doesn't necessarily generate like a ton of business directly. Like there's a lot of indirect financial and business benefits, but not direct. And so you're just putting this message out there, and you're like, I spend a lot of time and effort on this, and I really enjoy it. And you so it means a lot to you when someone else is enjoying it. And it doesn't have to be millions of people. It can literally just be one person. If we all have our podcast and all do our media stuff and it helps one person, then that's like more than enough for us. So the lesson there, I think, is like for me, it's been to not underestimate the amount of impact that I can have on one person's or multiple people's lives, even if you don't think they are, or you are having that impact. There's a lot of like silent listeners, right? They never hit like, hit subscribe, hit share, hit, whatever. They don't make it publicly known or to you that they're like listening. But you see someone that you haven't seen in a while, or you get an offhanded comment and they're like, I've listened to like 73 of your episodes. Like, oh my god, I didn't even know you existed. Like, that's amazing. Or, you've helped me so much in my life by that thing you said on that podcast. Like, wow, I had no idea you were even following me or even knew who I was. So, not underestimating the power of yourself as an individual and the impact that you can have um, on people's lives in a positive way. I hope it doesn't work that way in like a negative way. That would be kind of a weird, that would be kind of a weird thing.
Hmm.
But so, not underestimating the amount of impact that you can have. Maybe that's been like really the biggest lesson, like internally, that I've learned over the few years of doing the podcast.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge takeaway, and it aligns really well with you had shared that experience that you had with like the younger trainer fitness person that they kind of gave you a perspective shift that was
Yeah.
new. And I myself have experienced similar things where I'm like, what? Really? What? I'm just like, I just exist. Like,
Right.
but then I start to, for me, I realize how much of a pivotal role we can play within our like little interactions throughout the day. And so I'll contextualize this a little bit. Um, I will also preface it to say that like I have a personality type that probably some people can find to be, maybe they misread me as being disingenuine, or maybe they may misread me to be like far more passionate than what's necessary. Like there's lots of people who are like, man, you are just all about your career. And I'm like, well, it's kind of also my like sense of purpose. It's kind of like why I'm here.
Hmm.
And it's just like people can misread each other. But the main thing here is that I'm a big believer in finding opportunities to share with people things that you may think that they would benefit from hearing, and making sure that it's genuine. So an example being like there are times when I meet someone for the first time and I don't exactly understand how they came to conclusions that they came to, or why they choose the decisions that they choose, but then I ask more questions to kind of understand them more. And maybe all of a sudden, the things that they say, because I understand them better, they land with me differently.
Hmm.
And then I start to understand, I'm like, oh, wow, like this person is coming to this conclusion from a lot of experience that I didn't even account for. Kind of similar to that phenomenon where like people see all the white bald-ish guys at conferences and they're like, they all have like the same philosophy, same beliefs, same passions. Like, no, we're very different. I mean, we obviously have some common ground, but like there's a lot of differences between all of these individuals. And same goes for every interaction that we have, whether it be like mentors that we come across, or colleagues that we meet, or clients that we meet. And so, like, as I'm learning people's communication style, like whether they're someone who likes to share a lot or ask really tough questions, or perhaps there's someone who comes across as like blunt and everybody just thinks that they're a douche, but it turns out that they just are very direct. I've met
Hmm.
lots of personalities like that. And in doing that, I start to give them a chance to show me like what is their strength. And then as I learn their strength, what I've learned to be valuable is to tell them about it. Just be like, hey, you're really good at this. Like some examples are I know someone who is extremely resilient. No matter what obstacle they've come across, they always find their way out of it. And from an outsider's perspective, it could look like they're not where they want to be, but they wind up in a situation where they are actually extremely fulfilled with life. They their cup is full. They are working towards their sense of purpose. So like they're getting more things right than what I initially realized. And so when I can start to tap into that, I'm like, wow, like you're really good at being like a sibling, or you're really good at being a parent, etc. And so when I recognize that, I mention it to them. And for a lot of people, when that comes up, they haven't had somebody mention that before because we're all so like in our head, kind of like comparing with others and like worried about what other people think of us, or are we doing enough, or are we working hard enough, are we posting enough? And we're never considering how our like confirmations of other people's good qualities could be helpful to them, even to the extent, and this is where I come back to like I am a little bit passionate. Probably a lot of people have me muted on Instagram. Like it's a fact. That's just the way it is. But it's like I will just not hold back. If there's something nice that I have to share with somebody, I'm gonna share with them because I would hate the feeling of regret had I not done that.
Hmm.
Even if it's just a matter of like really hammering it home to somebody that like I really value their friendship. I can't say that enough to a lot of people because it's like if I ever lost it, it would shatter me to pieces. If we reflect on people that we've admired or cared for in our life, where maybe they died in an accident or just something happened or they just stopped talking to us. And we're like, oh man, life was better when they did talk to us. Like these things, they make a huge difference. And so I just wanted to kind of like highlight that for people. If people are kind of like, oh, nobody, I don't have any strengths, nobody ever sees me. If you get yourself into a position in your self-awareness and your sense of self-worth where you can consistently pick out the things that set people apart, even the people that you misunderstood at first, your quality of life will improve because not only will you be able to reflect and see the strengths in yourself, but you're also going to strengthen the people who surround you. Because if you're the person who elevates people around you, your circle is just going to be on another level. If for nothing else, they're going to feel good about themselves. Now, my next question for you is when is a time in the last year and a half, aside from your personal life, where you would have moments of joy when you are prepping for your wedding, or moments of joy when you're on just a really exciting date. But like, let's say within your professional life, aside from interactions with clients, where you have felt joy, where you've just been like, ah, this is great. And I know it got super specific, but I know you're up
Yeah.
for the challenge.
Yeah, you did. You were as you were narrowing things down. I'm like, oh, I got to check off so many things, like no personal life and professional life, but not interactions with clients. Like all of the most joyous things are probably things with clients because, like, when people do well, they're like that's the best thing. Like that's what I'm trying to do. But excluding all of those things, man, um, I mean, for sure, it's going to be something related to the podcast. I'm struggling to think of like a specific moment right now, but maybe it was like a certain number of plays that a podcast episode passed or something like that. I'm honestly, I'm struggling to think of like a very specific moment. I'm still not good at patting myself on the back for like
Yeah.
little milestone accomplishments um that I achieve. So probably something with the podcast and just again like another little realization of like, oh yeah, people are listening, people care about this, people enjoy it. You know what it is? It's actually this. There was a week and a half or like a two cycle of when I should have released an episode where I didn't this summer, the first time ever that again going back to consistency where I like didn't do it. I just like I got my schedule got mixed up and a couple cancellations and got behind and whatever. And and then there's a few people who reached out to me that like, hey, you haven't released an episode in a while. Like, is everything okay? Like, what's going on? And while that's like kind of like a shitty thing, but it was also a very positive thing for me because like, oh, you actually noticed and care that I'm a little bit behind on releasing episodes. So that was like probably a big thing for me if I can nail down one thing that's happened in the last little bit. But I wouldn't say that there's nothing more obvious than that that's sticking out to me as like a hey, this is a professional life thing that like this is the greatest joy um that I've had in the past little bit, aside from like things with working with clients, and there's been a lot of like really great things in my personal life in the last year and a half. But yeah, nah, that's probably pretty much it. I don't know if that's like really what you were looking for, but that's
No,
more or
I
less.
mean, any answer is a good answer. And
Yeah.
like, because it was just a bizarrely specific question, I feel that I must share what I would answer if you had framed that question to me.
Yes, please do.
So, some of the things that I've been reflecting on lately, and it's funny because I've been given shout outs for Aram Grigorian's event for the
Hmm.
last like several podcast episodes, and I don't think he listens to my podcast, so he may never know the love that I am showing him. But
We will tell him.
yeah,
Another
so
another bald bearded friend.
of course it's our alliance. Um, so what I'm going to expand on here is now I'm no stranger to conferences. We've hosted a few in Edmonton. We even had one in Edmonton before, like the Evolve Edmonton conference. It was right after the organizers shut down the gym and I had to work at a bar for a year. But that aside, um, when I experienced the Real Coaches Summit last year, that would be a point to which I was like, wow, oh, I feel joy. And it's really hard to pinpoint for people who don't have all the exact same experiences to me, or maybe the same like kind of like hyper focus on career kind of thing. Because there's a lot of times where I like forget how fast time goes by. I'm like, holy crap, like I've been in several different industries, but the industry that I've spent the most time in is the fitness industry. And that wasn't always something I could say. There used to be other industries where it was like, oh man, I've been in that industry a while, or I have lots of experience within this like realm. Like I have education in metallurgy. That is like the driest subject matter ever, but it's like part of my skill set.
Right.
I've been in a lab where we tested out melting point and different features of metal when you put it in a super hot oven, and that is just part of my legacy. But
Right.
now it is more than anything, working with people and helping them reach their goals and understanding the different personalities and seeing the adversity and seeing the big moments like the weddings and all this stuff. But it's just like this blur, like this fast, like everything's going a mile a minute. We're always okay. Now let's keep this ship afloat. Let's make sure that we're taking care of our clients. Oh, we lost a client. Let's find a new client. It's just go, 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 go. And then in being at that Real Coaches Summit, which I know that you weren't able to make it there, but I kind of like that's where the doppelganger came up because people are like, I've met you before. I'm like, I think you met Daniel Yores.
No way.
That
That's
was almost
hilarious.
always the case.
Oh, that's so funny. I
But
will be there this year, and I was upset I wasn't able to be there this past
it's
year.
going to be exciting to have you there because like just kind of like this sense of like calmness and sense of like solidarity because like you're around a bunch of different people with a lot of different styles to how they do their business and a lot of different like what is important to one person can be different from what is important to another person, but within that pool of people you're able to kind of find your people that you're just comfortable being yourself with and you're just comfortable existing with, and it's for most of the attendees there is not about, okay, now let's figure out how I can optimize the back end of my business. Like there will be like little sidebar conversations here and there, but for the most part, it's like, what do you do? Like, what are your hobbies? And like people will be
Yeah.
talking about like little video games they play or Lego, or they'll talk about like a book on philosophy that they're really immersed in, or they'll come up with new collaborative ideas that are very enriching for them. Like Mike Dolan and Jeb Stuart Johnston, they set up their podcast kind of leading up to that event and they kept it going after the event. It's kind of like slowed down a bit. I'm sure they're both very busy guys, but I got a lot out of those episodes. And a lot of what had that happen was just kind of like that spark that you feel when you're in the same space as
Yes.
people whose brains work similarly. Like there's a lot of people whose brains work very similarly at these conferences where when you're at your house working remotely and it's like, oh man, like am I just weird?
Yeah.
Like
Am I the
how
only
can
one doing
I
this? Yeah.
yeah. And so that is hands down a moment where I experienced just like this just no expectation, just like sense of like relaxation, sense of just calmness. If I could change anything about the conference, I would probably structure my time more so to do even less work while I was there, because I'm kind of like I just keep doing my regular thing no matter where I am geographically. A lot of the time I'll lighten the amount of work that I'll do when I'm traveling. But there was opportunities where I could have like scheduled some content and I didn't, and there's opportunities where I could have like set better boundaries around, okay, I'm just going to be off the grid during this time. And I didn't. One thing that I will say, because I know that there will be people that work with me that listen to this, I like doing the check-ins with clients no matter where I'm at. That's just fun. Like, largely because they're easy, they're not emotionally exhausting, and I think when people that I work with see that I'm out trying new things, it hopefully inspires them within their own framework of what they deem to be important to go and try new things. Like maybe they're super passionate about bird watching, maybe they go to a bird watching conference and they get to be around people with similar passions to them. Or maybe it's just simply the concept of booking a trip, getting on the plane and going. Because a lot of people are hesitant about that. So all of this to say that I hope if we have colleagues who listen to this, or even just like ferociously passionate fitness professionals that, or fitness enthusiasts, I should say, that listen to this, consider checking out the Real Coaches Summit. It's super expensive, but comparatively, like I'm saying this to justify that it is a cost. You do have to have some skin in the game to go to the thing, but you're going to get so much out of it
Yeah.
that the cost it doesn't matter what price it is. Um, and like I can guarantee it. Like Aram came up to me and he was like, "Chris, is there anything that I could have improved about this event? Anything that I could have done differently?" And there's lots of events where I could give them feedback, but this event, I'm still thinking of something. I still haven't come up with anything, not a single thing. I was walking around in flip-flops that I got from the event. All the bases were covered.
Yeah.
Like no stone left unturned. I was very impressed. So I don't know how much more of an endorsement I can give, but I'll probably keep giving them. Now, Daniel, do you have anything to add with regards to the Real Coaches Summit?
Yeah, yeah. So Aram is a friend of mine as well. I didn't go because I had a previous trip. Actually, the trip that I booked to Whistler, which I booked way in advance because of other things, was booked before the date of the Real Culture Summit. So that's why I wasn't there. However, I'll say this: these types of events that I've been to have been the one of the top three. I was gonna say single biggest, but at least like top two or three biggest things that have helped my career. You know, I would actually say it's the number one thing that has helped my career thus far. And it all tangentially helps with the podcast and helps with content and helps with clients and getting ideas and stuff like this. But getting in the same room as people who are on the same path as you and thinking about you as online coaches, it's really easy for us to one be siloed into like our own kind of like thought bubble and like, oh my god, I'm the only one doing this. Why are all these crazy people on Instagram doing like this influencer nonsense? Like, am I the weird one for not selling detox tea and all this stuff? Like, am I doing something wrong? And then you get in a room with other actual coaches, like great name as the Real Coaches Summit, but like you will not see some influencer dancing, whatever thing person there. Uh, who doesn't actually know what they're talking about. And you get in a room and like, okay, like I am actually doing the right thing. I'm doing better than I thought that I was. I'm on the right path here. Maybe I pick up a little nugget here and there, business wise or coaching wise, probably more importantly, as to something you can add to your business or to the way that you coach your clients, or pick up a nutrition tip that can help with that one client who's been struggling with XYZ thing. These are the things that have been most impactful, and making these personal connections in real life. Like it's cool to like DM people, it's cool to get on a podcast, and like that's another big huge step to actually have some FaceTime and talk and hash it out. But actually being in the same room and sitting down and shaking hands and having a meal and talking about not fitness stuff, just talking about like life stuff, just getting to know people as people is really the most important part. It's a huge kind of cliche thing, but it's like just in any industry, I guess it's less about what you know and more about who you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that definitely, I mean, you definitely need to know your stuff. So Like, don't just be a networking wizard and be a terrible coach. But you definitely need to know your stuff, but it's also important to just like get in the room with those people. The other thing with that is that it there's like an energy that comes about from these events. So then you return home, you're all fired up, you have some new ideas, you're reinvigorated, you're remotivated about the fitness industry and about the state of the health of the world or the country or whatever, and you're just excited to help people again. And it's important because that flame like it withers down after a while. And so I think going to a couple events a year, and they don't have to all have to be big events. You don't always have to get on a plane to travel somewhere. There are smaller local things more or less like wherever you live that you can get to, and even if that's like literally just meeting up with a friend in the industry and just like having lunch, which I
Yeah.
know, Chris, that you're a giant fan of doing things like that, of coffee chats and walks and stuff like that. But those things matter. Like get on the phone and call a friend or go meet up and hang out. Like these things will reinvigorate you and help you in your career far more than like trying to figure out how to like make a banging Instagram post. Like that might help, but like not as much as like getting in a room with really smart people to learn from the best of the industry and people that are maybe way ahead of you in terms of business and stuff like that, and people that are maybe half a step ahead of you, and maybe people that are half a step behind you as well. Because like each one teach one, right? Like the biggest thing is the easiest way to learn something is to teach it to someone else, or maybe the best way, not the easiest way. And so you learn something from someone, you help someone else who's behind you, you feel good about what you're doing, you're helping people, you're making friends, and it's just a phenomenal kind of environment. And so everyone I know who was at the Real Coaches Summit all said it was like one of, if not the best, like of these kind of events that they've been to, and I've been to a number of them. I've heard very good things about it. Obviously, I can't. I assume that it was amazing, and it is all the things that like you and everyone else says that it was. Um, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one this year.
And I mean, I'll even say like when I promote one event, it's not because I dislike any of the other events
Of
I've been
course.
to. And like you could choose any event and I'd be like, yeah, go to that one. Like even just a very simple event with like 20 attendees or 8 attendees, it's the fact that you're getting out there, you're connecting, you're
Hmm.
able to kind of see the insights of other people's like a lot of people think that the people with the perfect Instagram profile, their revenue must just be always crushing. But like from I get to get so much insight on the industry from a wider perspective. Everybody's revenue fluctuates. I was having a conversation with a coach earlier this morning and I even shared like my revenue. Like I get busiest it seems around October every year historically, and then it dips around November, December. Ironically, it gets busy around January, but I think that's more about like me just kicking things into gear and trying harder than it is about like that new year, new me rush. But it's just, you just got to anticipate this stuff. And then within that, knowing that time is very fleeting. And there was something that my dad shared with me recently that kind of stuck in my head because I was like, Dad, time goes by really fast, but you're a bit older than me. So how does time pass for you? And he was like, well, Chris, the difference between your 20s and your 30s feels like a moment. I was like, oh. And like, I imagine it would because I've got nieces and I still remember when they were little babies. And I still remember chasing them around when they were like 2 years old. And like the older I get, the more this stuff kind of impacts me. Like I'll be like, oh, where did time go? I remember you when you were a baby. And it's like, no, you're growing too fast. And that reinstills sort of my sense of like, okay, maybe the timing doesn't quite work out for this event. We're just gonna do whatever we can to go because I'm not gonna
Yeah,
regret it and things are gonna work out as long as I'm consistent with everything else that has got me to this point.
exactly.
But to keep us on track with time, because this has been an awesome episode and we can always do another one.
We
But
will.
my ask of you is going to be what is one piece of advice that you give to my audience? This could be for their health and fitness, this could be for their perspective, this could just be advice that you valued. The floor is yours.
I would say this, and I think it's along the theme of some things that we've been talking about today. And it's health and fitness, but it's also, your own personal life. One of the things that is most common amongst people who are healthy and fit for their entire life and as they age is that being or doing healthy behaviors or fitness behaviors is just part of what they do. So the same way that we don't really recognize the good things, the good qualities about us as easily because it's just what we do. Consider that the same thing is true about fitness people. And it's one of the knocks on like fitness people, like, oh, it's so easy for you because like you just get up and go to the gym every day. And so the piece of advice there is to find ways, and it doesn't have to be an entire lifestyle overhaul in one day, but it's find ways to make fitness or healthy behaviors just part of what you do. You have to flip the switch from it being a challenge, a 12-week program, whatever, a thing that you're trying to do and trying on, to just this is just what I do now. I wake up in the morning and I drink water. I go for a walk after work. I go to the gym 3 times a week. I eat vegetables at every meal. I eat protein at every meal. Like these small little things, and just make it who you are. And it's just a normal part of what you do. And then when it becomes your normal routine, after it'll take some forcing a little bit, but after a while, it becomes part of what you are, who you are, and what you do. And then everything is way easier from there. So find small little things and find ways to just inject it into your day to be just again a part of your normal routine rather than thinking of it as like some sort of challenge. And that will have major dividends for you down the road. And as you zoom out on the calendar of your consistency and how fast you want things to happen, like take a longer term look at things. And yeah, that's gonna move the needle a lot over a long period of time.
I think that's super, super valuable. And we'll have a little bit of banter off the air. But with that said, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today, Daniel. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate everyone for listening. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast and leaving ratings and reviews, written reviews. Those things help things grow so much, and we are so grateful for them. And they're small actions, but they really go a long way. So I will shout that out for you, Chris. Please, guys, leave ratings and reviews, follow all those things. They help tremendously.
Appreciate you.